Welcome to another EEAP and GotSafety webinar. I'm Rick Roman.
Michael Brown.
And today we are going to be talking about the mandatory reporting of the 2017 OSHA logs, the 300 logs. More specifically, we are talking about the electronic reporting, Mike.
Yep. We're talking about this weird electronic reporting law. As we get started here, let me just communicate with my team here to make sure we're all good to go. John, do we have audio going to the team out there?
Can you hear it, Ray? You are muted by an organizer.
Rick?
You can't hear yourself?
Give us one more second, people. I know we're live. Don't worry about it. There's always a technical glitch everywhere you go, isn't there? There should be something we can figure out here. Just give us a few more seconds.
I got it.
We've got the smartest team in the world on our back trying to get this thing locked and loaded. People with thousands of years of experience in this, old as the hills. Right, Rick?
I hope so. It's out of my hands at this point.
It's out of Rick's hands.
We getting audio yet? Still nothing. Well, you are muted because but is your sound on?
My sound is on all the way on.
Everybody out there in webinar land, if you can hear us, if you don't mind leaving a comment and just making sure we can be heard out there. If you can hear us, leave a comment. They've got it.
All right, so the problem is internally here. All right.
Internally. Ray is the handicap guy over here. You're dead to us, Ray. You're dead to us. You're dead to us.
All right. So anyway, before we get going here, Michael.
You know, I love a good smoked piece of meat, Rick. And Green Mountain Grills is a great smoker. We give this away every time we do a webinar. The Davy Crockett, the greatest smoker in the world. It retails for $399. 4th of July is coming up. We'll have it out to you by the 4th of July. You can smoke some ribs, some chicken.
And a bag of pellets to go along with it.
Yeah, we'll send you a bag of pellets so you can do that. It'll be great. Love it all day long.
All right, so at the end of the webinar here, we're going to ask you a simple question, so pay attention, and the first person to call into our 800 number with the right answer will win that smoker.
Hey, you know what? It'll be wonderful. You're going to like this. Pay attention to what we've got going on. Now, this weird code that we've got is basically a reporting system that mandates that every business across the country, really, and there's some caveats that we're going to get into, start electronically reporting to OSHA. And this is a huge step for us, isn't it, Rick? Yes,
it is. So this was an OSHA trade release that was released. You can see the date here, April 30th. So just last month, this came out basically mandating that the states that have not yet started their own program with this, that basically this was going to rule to everybody. Across the country, Fed, OSHA, and some of the other states already have this in place, but there were a few holdouts, and we'll get into that. And they're basically saying that you have to file electronically, even if your state doesn't have that in place. You think something like that really has much teeth to it, Michael? What is the jurisdiction on the Fed side?
Well, you know, the jurisdiction is basically falls down to this. If you are across the country, Fed, OSHA has jurisdiction unless the state has its own program. If the state has its own program, then the state has the jurisdiction to be able to collect those fines or taxes, if you will, and to be able to bring it in-house to the state. That's why California has it, and there's a lot of states that are producing this. So if you are in a state that has its own state program, now the question comes to it is, can Fed OSHA come in and cite you? Well, technically, yes, but the reality is it never happens. In fact, OSHA has the jurisdiction, and so, in fact, I take back that statement of technically yes. They just don't. They don't have the jurisdiction. They don't have the jurisdiction to cite you in a state. But the Fed does have the jurisdiction to put pressure and to lead the country in OSHA rules and violations.
So there is a caveat that the states have to meet the certain criteria set by the feds, and so really the Fed would have to threaten to or actually eventually shut down a state's program for not complying. But during the time that, I mean, really this law that they're telling us to do, it's not on the state's books, and we'll get to those states that don't have it yet. And so they really can't cite you, right? If it's not like California, for instance, is one of them, and there's nothing
they can't cite you, and they cannot cite you, and that's a key aspect. But when we talk about this law, Really the precedented scale of what this law is before in California and across the country, we had things called 300 logs. And yours may have varied and differed besides that, but the 300 log was the standard that you posted in your own business. But never did you ever have to report to Cal OSHA the minor accidents. Yes, if you were seriously maiming people, you would have to report. But minorly maiming? A minor maim? A minor maim may not have to be reported because it just didn't hit that level of a serious accident. And so now OSHA is saying, we want it all. And that's an interesting way that they're going to start targeting businesses. Yes. I find this to be quite a breach of I don't know. Is it confidentiality, Rick? Well, is it privacy of a business? I don't know. It's a topic for another day. Yes. I will say, though, this is a very big deal for businesses to be able to report all, not serious, but all their accidents, Rick. That's what I would say.
So as we go forward here, remember, the Fed states already have to comply with this, and most of the state plans do, and we'll get into that here.
And Rick, did you say that came out on April 30th?
That came out on April 30th.
Did you know that April 30th is your wife's birthday?
It is, and it's yours as well.
And it is my birthday, too, and Rick's birthday is June 1st. For anybody that wants to, May 1st?
The following day.
Thank you, Rick. For anybody that wants to give us a gift, feel free. April 30th next year. Bring it on.
All right. Anyway, so as far as people that have to report here, you're talking about companies that have 250 more employees and are currently required to keep OSHA records.
Yep.
So there's a link here below that shows that gives you the exempt companies. If you're not on that list of exempt companies, you'd be one that was required to report. If you are exempt, if you happen to have too many injuries, OSHA may tell you have to report anyway. And those people would have to report.
So remember what he said. If you are at 250 employees or more, no matter what you do for work, you have to report under this law, correct?
Well, there's this link here provides for some exempt businesses.
Oh, there are some exempt businesses.
There are some exempt businesses unless you've had problems and OSHA then mandates you, even though that you would normally be exempt, that you have to report. Then the next tier would be the 20 to 249 employees. Now, this link is kind of the opposite. This link provides all of the companies that do have to report. So if you don't fall on this list, you would be exempt, but otherwise 20 to 249 you have to report. The only true exemptions is 1 to 19 employees.
I got you. So 250 and up, everybody but a couple.
Right.
And you go to that link and it'll tell you what that couple is. Anybody under 249 down to 20, it's just the specific few.
Yes.
And Rick, have you put together a list of what these specific few look like?
We have, and actually this came off of that link. This is about half of the industries here.
And let me make sure I'm clear, Rick. This is the 20 to 249.
The 20 to 249. So if now this is only half of the list, but just to give you some examples, if you fall into these codes, now if you look here, you have this NAICS code there.
Rick, what in the world does that thing stand for?
That is the North American Industry Classification System. It's the way they determine what businesses do for work. Yes, they do. Now, these codes that you see here, they're usually like 6 digits long. So these are actually subcategories of those categories. Notice the ones that up at the top, you're only showing 2 digits. So pretty much everything that starts with a 2, 3 is in construction. So if you're in construction, you're probably, no matter what you're doing, you're in the list. But these other ones, if you type up a Google search on your industry and an NAICS code, you'll be able to see if you start off with one of these prefixes. As you can see, there's a bunch of them.
Rick. OSHA uses this code when they're issuing these citations to gauge what industry and how the culture plays out. It's used in the citation process a lot, so if you don't know what yours is, it's not hard to find out. You can give us a call and we can help you further that down. But just take a look at this. You're talking the taxi and limousine service business. What a great service to be in, the taxi and limousine service. But now, under this rule, the taxi and limousine service would have to report to OSHA every year all of their violations.
And you wouldn't think of them as really a high hazard industry.
You really would not. I mean, now, with the Postal Service, back in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of jokes to make, but I think the Postal Service are good people. I mean, they're nice and docile nowadays.
And a relatively safe industry again. Right.
So you can see the warehouse and storage, there's a lot of them, and everybody out there, I'm betting you fall under one of these categories.
Yes, there's very few of you that wouldn't fall under that. Again, if you were only up to 19 employees, and what constitutes how many employees the company has?
How many people are basically on payroll? For instance, we're a corporation. I own this business. And so with that being said, I am an employee because I'm on payroll. And so that's what you've got to look at. So if you have 18 employees and you and your wife own the business, the logic is you're at 20, especially if the two of you are on payroll.
Yes.
And that's the key aspect. How many people do you have on your payroll? I would go off that number, that's for sure.
So let's take a look at the states that have not adopted and where all the question really lies.
My gosh, these guys are the mavericks of the country. My heaven's sakes, and what's shocking to me, Rick, is California's on there.
Yes.
I mean, good night,
They're
these
usually
guys.
one of the first.
My gosh, these guys are always looking to cite us or raise it up.
But tell the folks here why it is that some of these states have been a little reluctant in jumping on board with this.
I would say, Rick, that one of the reasons why these states have been reluctant is because they're smarter than the common state to a certain degree. There has been talk by the federal system that they're going to either change or rescind this law. Now, that is an interesting thing to think about for a minute. At this very moment, the federal system is talking about changing this or the criteria of it dramatically or rescinding the law altogether. Because this is a coming into a business and saying, we want all your information, this is such a big thing, there are people across the country that are fighting this. They're trying to push back on this and call their politicians, which is a great idea for anybody watching this webinar. But the simple thing is this, these maverick states have said, all right, until you know exactly what you're doing, we're not going to go through the trouble of mandating this in our state. But let's go on.
And we've been seeing it kind of getting pushed back. I believe it was originally September of last year. It was supposed to be the deadline, and then it got pushed to December, and then it keeps getting pushed.
Yeah.
Now the feds finally step in and say, enough, we want you to do it anyway. But let's see what the responses are of some of these different states here that are not quite on board yet.
So we're going to look at the responses that the states are saying when the OSHA system implement this.
Yes.
State number one, Rick, which is it?
Well, so we're talking about here, we've got South Carolina and Minnesota.
Gotta love South Carolina.
Both of them came out and announced after this rule came out that they were going to go ahead and get their program in place sometime in May. As of Monday, and we've only got a few days left in May, South Carolina has still not done anything. Minnesota, on the other hand, effective the 21st of May, has already put the rule in place. So now, if you're in Minnesota, now you fall in with the rest of the country that does have to comply.
So out of those maverick states that we saw, we've got two so far. One that has not adopted anything, South Carolina. And by the way, are you a fan of the South Carolina barbecue sauce or the Texas guy?
I think I prefer the Texas.
And a lot of vinegar out there, Rick. A lot of vinegar. So the logic of it is South Carolina has not put it into place yet, but hasn't really released a statement. Is that correct?
Right.
And Minnesota has just put it in as of May 21st of this year. And so if you're in Minnesota, you've got to do this now. This way, we're one of the mavericks, but they fell suit and they're in line now.
So in South Carolina, you're going to have to keep your eye on it, because if they wind up mandating this before the June or July 1st date, you're going to fall in with the rest. Now we'll go to California and Utah.
God bless California.
Now they've been a little more docile in this. They're not jumping right in, but they're not fighting too bad. California, if you go to their website, you can see it's highlighted in yellow. They're saying that employers are advised to comply.
I'm not even sure what advised means. I mean, you look at the word advised, and it really is meaning that it's recommended, or we hope you do, or we'd like to think you will. So everybody that's sitting in California, your question for us is this: do we have to do it? And what we're saying is, you're advised. Because Cal OSHA has not adopted it yet. They just haven't said we're on board yet. So we're advising you to do it. And if you take that advice or not, well, at this point, we've seen no citations, because it obviously hasn't come into place until July 1st of this year. Right, Rick?
Correct.
And so when it happens, we're going to keep you posted if we see citations. But the reality of it is, our contacts are saying to us they're not anticipating implementing this at all until the state says yes. The inspectors and the district managers, that will remain nameless, are telling us that they're not going to implement this until they hear the yes from the state, and it really becomes a Cal OSHA law, which at this point it's not.
And from an article that I saw in Lexology regarding Utah, Utah's basically telling people that they're welcome to post it. And it says, but they don't have to, and it's not something that Utah can enforce. They're flat out telling you, you're welcome to, but we can't do anything about it.
Right. And that's an interesting thing. And so you look at Utah and California, which you never really compare in the same pot usually. They're usually two different spectrums. But they're both saying, hey, we advise you, you're welcome to, this is not a bad idea. So as a business owner, you're going to make that choice. Your human resource or whatever your responsibilities, you've got to make that choice that's right for you. But again, in Utah and California, it's not a law yet under your state program.
All right, now we're going to get back here to the ones that are really pushing back.
Washington and Maryland. You know what? I love these guys.
So Washington and Maryland are the first two. Washington, right off of a tweet that they put out, they're basically saying that that you are still not required to submit electronically, despite the recent announcement from OSHA.
Well, you're really sticking it to the Fed OSHA system when your state program says, nope, we're not going to do it. We are not going to follow your process. You don't have to do it public of our own state. God bless Washington. They're holding out there.
Yep, and Maryland as well, under no legal obligation to submit. And it says that updates to their adoption process will appear on this website. So as they decide, eventually everyone's going to have to comply with whatever.
I'm afraid you're right, Rick. I'm afraid you're right.
But they're telling you here, you don't have to yet, and they'll let you know when it's on the website. So they're basically saying, don't worry about what the feds are telling you.
But Rick, what if we had enough people call their politicians, and enough people really call their politicians and talk to them about this?
Well, hopefully, I mean, that's how action gets taken. I mean, it just depends on, what they got bigger fish to fry and how hard they're going to fight on this. But Wyoming, they're another one of the maverick states here saying,
Wyoming,
it says right on their site, it does not apply to Wyoming, despite the April 30th news release. How much more clear can they be?
Let me tell you.
I mean, there's no dispute that they're referring to the mandate that just came out last month.
Those 15 people that gathered themselves together in Wyoming to say no to it, the whole 15 people in the state, they really stuck their finger to the OSHA system out there. That's fantastic.
So the bottom line is that we've been instructed to do it by people who really don't have the authority to come in here and cite us. Those that have the authority don't have the records on their books yet, the laws on their books, so they can't cite you. But some are recommending that you do, but it's ultimately your business decision. And like Michael said, it's information that they can use against you in ways that might not be to your benefit.
It may not be. What's funny to this is you come to this webinar, a lot of you guys are from California, you come to the webinar today to know what you need to do. And we're telling you, it's not a law yet in Cal OSHA. We've gotten so many calls on this and people are really worried about what they're going to do and have to do. We decided to move forward with this webinar to let you know it's not a law yet. So don't do anything in California. If you fall under one of the other states, Wyoming or stuff that are in that purgatory state, then the reality of it is they could do that. But for Californians, our recommendation, we're advising you just to stay neutral. Just stay neutral. If you really want to do it, go do it. But there's no law in the Cal OSHA books right now that mandates this for us, and Cal OSHA is not going to cite you for it as of today and as of July 1st. But as soon as we get that, you can bet your little tootsies that we're going to put on another webinar, give away another smoke break, and give you the information that you need.
Yep. And in the meantime, as you do have till the July 1st deadline, not a bad idea to periodically pop on your state's website if you're one of those 6 states that still haven't implemented it, to see if anything's changed between now and then.
You'll love it.
So, John, do you have any questions from the folks out there?
I do. We have a question. If you are doing business in California, should you be watching this webinar?
Yes, you should watch this webinar anytime in the world. You should watch it before you go to bed at night. This webinar is good for you. If you do business in California, this webinar is really good for you because it puts you straight. But that tells me you're doing business in another state. And that way you need to figure out which state you have. Give us a call in-house. Ask for Rick or Steve, my other representative, and they can answer questions for you in that other state that you're in, making sure that you got covered with training and documentation.
And remember, if you're doing business in California, you have to go. We see people getting cited all the time that are from across the country because they're doing. You got to follow California laws when you're doing business there, or in any state. That would be.
Make sure you have that program.
Is it 250 current employees?
Yes, So if it's 250 current employees, so if you anticipate you're getting to a higher employee count, but you wouldn't do it until you reach that point. in theory, if it was a state code. So if your state is mandating this, yes, when you hit 250, start doing it.
So if you say you had 250 and maybe you dropped some now, but you broke that barrier, I would say you would still have to comply with that. Would that be
Yes,
correct?
if you are at 250 and you broke that barrier, yes. But if you've fallen down to 240, then the answer would be no. Because if you're over 250, you would have to do that.
All right.
And then what if employees are seasonal or temporary? Do they count as full-time employees?
These are great questions. And once we get a Cal OSHA statement in there, my answers may change. But as we see it today, as it's rolling out, this is what our statement is. If you are employing people, okay, and you have people on site, if you're working through a staffing company or whatnot, and you have 100 people and they have 300 people, altogether you're hitting this number, my recommendation is that you're going to comply with this, because that shared employer's responsibility thing is unclear under the Cal OSHA. It's called a multi-employer work site, and that's a shared responsibility. So if some of them are your employees and some of them are leased employees, remember, if they hit 250, my recommendation is you're going to comply with this law.
Okay. So a few of the questions that just came in were related to what you just said. So,
Okay.
Let's see. They're coming in pretty fast.
Got your questions coming, people. You're doing great.
If we have offices in multiple locations and the home office is in Minnesota, we have less than 20 in some of those locations. Do we report those under 20? Because as a corporate office, we have over 70.
That's a good question. I need more information about your account. You should call in and talk to Steve or Rick, and I can give a more specific answer to that. Overall, I would say this to you. If your company hits 250 across the country, no matter what state you're in.
Or the 20 to 249.
If you hit one of the employee requirements, no matter if they're scattered out across the country, and this is why Fed OSHA is hitting it across the country, so that people don't fall into the pockets that you're describing, you're gonna hit this system. If Minnesota is one of them that said, we're not gonna put this in place yet, was Minnesota one of the ones that said that?
Well, Minnesota's the one that just went.
They just put it in. So Minnesota's the one that just put it in. The answer is yes. If you're like at 20 employees or more, you're gonna comply, no matter if they're not all in Minnesota.
Okay, that's great. And then someone asked to verify in California, we do not have to comply with the electronic recording as of today.
As of today, Cal OSHA has no law that tells us that we have to report in this fashion today. That could change, and when it does, we'll let you know. Fed OSHA has a law, but Fed OSHA has no jurisdiction in California unless you're on federal land.
Before we get another question, John, let's take just a quick intermission to give away the smoker and also
Yes, please keep bringing your questions. We're going to give away the smoker. We're going to ask a few questions, answer a few questions more. Just in a general plug here, if you have any needs out there with GotSafety or EAP, some on-site or a mobile app with helping you track and train your people, let us know. Come on in. We also have started up doing live video lessons for companies at different spots across the country. So if you're looking for a live lesson for one of our trainers to give a live presentation to your people on a monthly basis or weekly basis, give us a call. We'd love to help you with that too. Moving on.
Great.
Here we go. Smoker time, people. Let's give away a smoker.
Time. All right. So we're ready for the first person to call into our 800 number with the answer to the question.
All right.
Name 3 states that had not adopted the reporting rule as of the trade release.
All right, we had those maverick states up there, right? You got to name 3.
Just
right?
name 3 of them.
Just
There were 7.
You got to name. Right?
And you're going to call the 800-734-3574 number. And the first one to call in with the answer to that great question will win a smoker.
Rick, I'm thinking about all the people that could be smoking a nice, beautiful rack of baby back ribs for 4th of July, and I'm excited to see who the lucky winner is. There's always that spot as we sit here, we're like, and who are the 3 states, and are they going to get it right? And then we got to dilly dance until we have somebody call in.
So maybe we'll take some more questions.
Let's take some more questions
while we're waiting for someone to call.
Bring it to us.
I got another good one. What if we hire temps, which the agency will have their own workers' comp? Do we still need to report on the OSHA 300?
The reality right now, as I'm saying this, and I have the opportunity, and I may change my opinion as I see citations come through in the state of California and across the country. Remember, it's very new, but this is the reason why I'm saying, yes, you should. It's because it's called a multi-employer work site. And in this kind of a circumstance, even though you're leasing employees and that guy gets hurt, yes, the staffing company has responsibility, but because you are the responsible employer or the supervising employer, those categories get very mixed, and that piece of it could make it so that you do. So I
And
would say,
sometimes they work out an agreement with the leaser and the companies as to who's going to be responsible. So that really depends on what you've got worked out contractually with the people of who's going to be responsible for reporting.
but OSHA, I don't think is going to look at it as well. Those other 200 employees or that other group is leased, so you don't have to. I believe, and there's no way to know this until the citations start coming through and we see the implementation of it, but I believe they're not going to go that way. They are going to say, how many people are working under your roof today?
Cool. We have another one from California. If we chose to be advised and report on July 1st, where do we report?
You go to the website and
Yes. So when we sent out this invitation, and you can contact us, we sent out an attachment that basically showed you where you would go. You have to set up an account and where how to set it all up and process it. So it's all detailed, makes it real good and simple.
in the invitation.
So the invitation, you got it, and if you don't find it there, call us and we can re-email it to you.
Yep. Do an email search on that. You'll find it.
Yep.
Big John.
So just to verify, we're getting some comments that the phone number is unavailable. So it's 800-734-3574.
That means
We got lines lit up over there. It's probably unavailable because the lines are jammed.
They're lit, and they may be unavailable because you're beating down my phone system. I've got like 100 lines out here. You know, we're very large as a company, but my gosh, you're beating me down like a.
But we're still waiting for the person with the yes, we're waiting for the call to get transferred.
Keep trying.
From
Keep
our
trying.
people.
John,
Keep
you
trying.
got another question for us as we wait?
Let's see. As a general contractor in California, do we need to report subs injuries?
No, that's different because
that is different.
that is, and even though you're falling under the multi-employer work site, those subs are going to be different than your company. And so you would have to report the sub's injury if it qualified as a serious injury, but that's another conversation. We're talking about general accidents.
Right.
On a serious perspective, the answer would be yes. As a general contractor, you need to report your sub's injuries on your job sites if they're serious. You have a responsibility to that. But on general lowercase accidents, the answer would be, I don't believe that's going to be the case.
No,
I don't believe
they're working other places that aren't your sites in most cases, and yeah, their primary employer would be responsible, I'm certain.
Right.
We got one more.
Go up to the big item in the scheduling room and make sure we're good to go up there.
They said they have a winner. They're just.
Oh, apparently we have a winner, so we need to cease the calls. If you haven't gotten through, we have a winner. They just need to get them through to us.
We've got a winner.
So another question.
Oh, hang on, we're gonna get them online here in just a minute to validate as
John?
soon as we can.
Let's see. So are we supposed to report every single incident happened the day of, or can it be reported on a monthly basis?
It's going to be reported on an annual basis. And Rick, your phone's ringing. That's going to be reported on an annual basis. And when that happens on an annual basis, what you're going to find is you'll just put it all together.
All right, Michael, we got somebody on the line here. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, this is Patricia Kennedy in California.
Patricia,
Hey.
how's your day going today?
It's going really well. How's your day?
Patricia,
Well, it'll be going real well
it's going
here
to
in a
go
minute.
great if you can give me these 3 states. Do you like smoked meat, Patricia?
Yes.
We all do, Patricia. It's a highlight of our lives. Me and Rick have partaken of a lot of these, Patricia. Patricia, give me the 3 states. Make us happy, Patricia.
California, Washington, and Maryland.
Woo!
Congratulations!
All right.
Yeehaw, Ray. All right, here we go. We're going to give that over to you and make sure you're taken care of.
Here, Ray, can you
Ray.
come and get this?
Ray, come on over into the camera. Ray, we love Ray.
Get the information here
Patricia,
from Patricia.
we're going to give you the greatest man in the world, and he's going to take your information. Is that okay, Patricia?
That sounds wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you
Patricia.
so much.
Thanks. All right.
All right,
So,
we got our
John, do you have
winner.
any questions that have come through that we should be
Yeah,
answering?
just one more question. So I want to clarify that you believe no citations will be given if we do not upload our reports by July 1st.
I believe no citation will be given on the basis that OSHA does not have a law to do it. I want to make that clear. It is based on the California does not have a law to do it. OSHA is advising. that you do it. And the inspectors that I've talked to have all told me that they have no plans to cite this because there's no Cal OSHA law they can cite with. When a Cal OSHA agent comes out, an inspector comes out to your office or your building to do an inspection, they don't use Fed OSHA code to cite you. They can only use Cal OSHA code. And so in that realm, because there's no Cal OSHA
Right.
code that has this, there are not going to be any citations. But the word is advised that California is using, and that is not a commandment. Okay, it's not a commandment, nor is it a code that you will ensure or you will do. And so that's where we're coming to this piece. But we want everybody to know, we've never seen a citation on this. California doesn't have it. And your interpretation of advise is as good as anybody else's. This is the problem with the state. So don't look to us as we're giving you vague information. I'm saying this, though. As soon as I start seeing citations, I'm going to have an email blast going out like crazy. And I want to make it clear. I track every business in the state of California that is hit by OSHA. And so I'll know within a few weeks of something getting popped on this subject. I will know incredibly fast. And so there you go.
And that basically answers our last question. Any word on Arizona and New Mexico? So,
Well, Arizona and New Mexico, you'd have to comply with this because they're not one of the states that held out.
No.
So they are either on the Fed program, or if they have their own state programs, they've already complied. So
they have to. So if you're in Arizona, they gave in. They gave up. I love it. Hey, thank you for coming to our webinar
Thank
today.
you.
We really appreciate your time. If you have any questions or comments, or you need to know more about our GotSafety app that can help you digitize and keep track of all your people, let us know. My name is Michael Crowley,
Rick Robin,
and we will see you next time at our greatest safety webinar known to mankind.
thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.